Hello, and thank you for joining me in Annie Stories. In today's video, I'll be reading A.J. Glinsky's fairy tale, translated by Maud Asher Spiggs, called Princess Miranda and Prince Hero. So without further ado, let us begin our journey of Polish fairy tales. Princess Miranda and Prince Hero. Far away, in the wide ocean, there was once a green island where lived the most beautiful princess in the world, named Miranda. She had lived there ever since her birth and was queen of the island. Nobody knew who were her parents or how she had come there, but she was not alone, for there were 12 beautiful maidens who had grown up with her on the island and were her ladies-in-waiting. But a few strangers had visited the island and spoken of the princess's great beauty, and many more came in time and became her subjects and built a magnificent city in which she had a splendid palace of white marble to live in. And in course of time, a great many young princes came to woo her, but she did not care to marry any of them, and if anyone persisted and tried to compel her by force to be his wife, she could turn him and all his soldiers into ice by merely fixing her eyes upon them. One day, the wicked Kashier, the king of the Underworld realm, came out into the upper world and began to gaze all around it with his telescope. Various empires and kingdoms passed in review before him, and at last he saw the green island and the rich city upon it, and the marble palace in this city, and in this palace the 12 beautiful young ladies of honor, and among them he beheld, lying on a rich couch of swan's down, the Princess Miranda, asleep. She slept like an innocent child, but she was dreaming of a young knight, wearing a golden helmet on a gallant steed, and carrying an invisible mace that fought of itself, and she loved him better than life. Kashier looked at her. He was delighted with her beauty. He struck the earth 3 times and stood upon the green island. Princess Miranda called together her brave army and led them into the field to fight the wicked Kashier. But he, blowing on them with his poisonous breath, sent them all fast asleep. And he was just going to lay hands upon the princess when she, throwing a glance of scorn at him, changed him into a lump of ice and fled to her capital. Kashier did not long remain ice. So soon as the princess was away, he freed himself from the power of her glance, and regaining his usual form, followed her to her city. Then he sent all the inhabitants of the island to sleep, and among them the princess's 12 faithful damsels. She was the only one whom he could not injure, but being afraid of her glances, he surrounded the castle, which stood upon a high hill, with an iron rampart, and placed a dragon with 12 heads on guard before the gate, and waited for the princess to give herself up of her own accord. The days passed by, then weeks, then months, while her kingdom became a desert. All her people were asleep, and her faithful soldiers also lay sleeping on the open fields. Their steel armor all rusted, and wild plants were growing over them undisturbed. Her 12 maidens were all asleep in different rooms of the palace, just where they happened to be at the time, and she herself, all alone, kept walking sadly to and fro in a little room up in a tower, where she had taken refuge, wringing her white hands, weeping, and her bosom heaving with sighs. Around her all were silent, as though dead. Only every now and then, Kashier, not daring to encounter her angry glance, knocked at her door, asking her to surrender, promising to make her queen of his underground realm. But it was all of no use. The princess was silent and only threatened him with her looks. But grieving in her lonely prison, Princess Miranda could not forget the lover of whom she had been dreaming, She saw him just as he had appeared to her in her dream, and she looked up with her blue eyes to heaven, and seeing a cloud floating by, she said, "O cloud, through the bright sky flying, stay, and hearken my piteous sighing. In my sorrow I call upon thee. Oh, where is my loved one? Say. Oh, where do his footsteps stray? And does he now think of me?" "I know not," the cloud replied. "Ask the wind." And she looked out into the wide plain, and seeing how the wind was blowing freely, she said, "O wind, over the wide world flying, do thou pity my grief and crying? Have pity on me. Oh, where is my loved one? Say. Oh, where do his footsteps stray? And does he now think of me?" "Ask the stars," the wind replied. "They know more than I do." So she cried to the stars, "O stars, with your bright beams glowing, look down on my tears fast flowing. Have pity on me. Oh, where is my loved one? Say. Oh, where do his footsteps stray? And does he now think of me?" "Ask the moon," said the stars, "who being nearer to earth knows more of what happens there than we do." So she said to the moon, "Bright moon, as your watch you keep from the starry skies over this land of sleep, look down now and pity me. Oh, where is my loved one? Say. Where do his footsteps stray? And does he now think of me?" "I know nothing about your loved one, princess," replied the moon, "but here comes the sun, who will surely be able to tell you." And the sun rose up in the dawn, and at noontide stood just over the princess's tower, and she said, "Thou soul of the world, bright sun, look on me, in this prison undone. Have pity on me. Oh, where is my loved one? Say. Through what lands do his footsteps stray? And does he now think of me?" "Princess Miranda," said the sun, "dry your tears, comfort your heart. Your lover is hastening to you from the bottom of the deep sea. From under the coral reefs, he has won the enchanted ring. When he puts it on his finger, his army will increase by thousands, regiment after regiment, with horse and foot. The drums are beating, the sabers gleaming, the colors flying, the cannon roaring. They are bearing down on the empire of Kashier, but he cannot conquer him by force of mortal weapons. I will teach him a surer way, and there is good hope that he will be able to deliver you from Kashier and save your country. I will hasten to your prince. Farewell." The sun stood over a wide country, beyond the deep seas, beyond high mountains, where Prince Hero, in a golden helmet on a gallant horse, was drawing up his army and was preparing to march against Kashier, the besieger of the fair princess. He had seen her 3 times in a dream, and had heard much about her, for her beauty was famous throughout the world. "Dismiss your army," said the sun. "No army can conquer Kashier. No bullet can reach him. You can only free Princess Miranda by killing him. And how you are to do it, you must learn from the old woman, Yenjar. I can only tell you where you will find the horse that must carry you to her. Go hence towards the east. You will come to a green meadow, in which there are 3 oak trees. And among them you will find hidden in the ground an iron door with a brazen padlock. Behind this door you will find a battle charger and a mace. The rest you will learn afterwards. Farewell." Prince Hero was most surprised, but he took off his enchanted ring and threw it into the sea. With it all, his great army vanished directly into mist, leaving no trace behind. He turned to the east and traveled onwards. After 3 days, he came to the green meadow, where he found the 3 oak trees and their iron door, as he had been told. He opened upon a narrow crooked stairway going downwards, leading to a deep dungeon, where he found another iron door, closed by a heavy iron padlock. Behind this, he heard a horse neighing so loudly that it made the door fall to the ground, and at the same moment 11 other doors flew open, and there came out a war horse, which had been shut up there for ages by a wizard. The prince whistled to the horse tugged at his fastenings, and broke 12 chains by which he had been fettered. He had eyes like stars, flaming nostrils, and a mane like a thundercloud. He was a horse of horses, the wonder of the world. "Prince Hero," said the horse, "I have long waited for such a rider as you, and I am ready to serve you forever. Mount my back, take the mace in your hand, which you see hanging to the saddle. You need not fight with it yourself, for it will strike wherever you command it, and beat a whole army. I know the way everywhere. Tell me where you want to go, and you will presently be there." The prince told him everything, took the self-fighting mace in his hand, and sprang on his back. The horse reared, snorted, spurned the ground, and they flew over mountains and forests, higher than the flying clouds, over rapid rivers and deep seas. But when they flew along the ground, the charger's light feet never trampled down a blade of grass, nor raised an atom of dust on the sandy soil. Before sunset, Prince Hero had reached the primeval forest in which the old woman, Yenjar, lived. He was amazed at the size and age of the mighty oaks, pine trees, and firs, where there reigned a perpetual twilight. And there was absolute silence, not a leaf or a blade of grass stirring, and no living thing, not so much as a bird or the hum of an insect. Only amidst this grave-like stillness, the sounds of his horse's hooves. The prince stopped before a little house, supported on crooked legs, and said, "Little house, move on your crooked legs free. Turn your back to the wood, and your front to me." The house turned round, with a door towards him, and the prince went in, and the old woman Yenjar asked him, "How did you get here, Prince Hero, where no living soul has penetrated till now?" "Don't ask me, but welcome your guest politely." So the old woman gave the prince food and drink, made up a soft bed for him to rest on after his journey, and left him for the night. Next morning he told her all, and what he had come for. "You have undertaken a great and splendid task, Prince, so I will tell you how to kill Kashier. In the ocean, on the island of everlasting life, there is an old oak tree. Under this tree is buried a coffer bound with iron. In this coffer is a hare. Under the hare sits a grey duck. This duck carries her an egg, and in this egg is enclosed the life of Kashier. When you break the egg, he will die at once. Now goodbye, Prince, and good luck to you. Your horse will show you the way." The prince got on horseback, and they soon left the forest behind them, and came to the shore of the ocean. On the beach was a fisherman's net, and in the net was a great fish, who, when he saw the prince, cried out piteously, "Prince Hero, take me out of the net, and throw me back into the sea. I will repay you." The prince took the fish out of the net, and threw it into the sea. It splashed in the water, and vanished. The prince looked over the sea, and saw the island in the great distance, far, far away. But how was he to get there? He leaned upon his mace, deep in thought. "What are you thinking of, Prince?" asked the horse. "I am thinking how I am to get to the island when I cannot swim over that breadth of sea." "Sit on my back, Prince, and hold fast." So the prince sat firm on the horse's back, and held fast by the thick mane. A wind rose, and the sea was somewhat rough, but rider and horse pushed on, through the billows, and at last came to the shore on the island of everlasting life. The prince took off his horse's bridle, and let him loose to feed in the meadow of a luxuriant grass, and walked on quickly to a high hill, where grew the old oak tree. Taking it in both hands, he tugged at it. The oak resisted all his efforts. He tugged again. The oak began to creak and moved a little. He mustered all his strength and tugged again. The oak fell with a crash to the ground, with its roots uppermost, and there, where they had stood firmly fixed so many years, was a deep hole. Looking down, he saw the iron-bound coffer. He fetched it up, broke open the lock with a stone, raised the lid, picked up the hare lying in it by its ears. But at that moment, the duck, which had been sitting under the hare, took the alarm, and flew off straight to sea. The prince fired a shot after her. The bullet hit the duck. She gave one loud quack and fell. But in that same instant, the egg fell from her, down to the bottom of the sea. The prince gave a cry of despair, but just then a great fish came swimming, dived down to the depths of the sea, and coming to the shore with the egg in its jaws, left it on the sand. The fish swam away, but the prince, taking up the egg, mounted his horse once more, and they swam till they reached Prince Miranda's island, where they saw a great iron wall stretching all round her white marble palace. There was only one entrance through this iron wall to the palace, and before this lay the monstrous dragon with the 12 heads, 6 of which kept guard alternately. When the one half slept, the other 6 remained awake. If anyone were to approach the gate, he could not escape the horrid jaws. Nothing could hurt the dragon, for he could only suffer death by his own act. The prince stood on the hill before that gate, and commanded his self-fighting mace, which also had the faculty of becoming invisible, to go and clear his entrance to the palace. The invisible self-fighting mace fell upon the dragon and began to thunder on all his heads with such force that all his eyes became bloodshot, and he began to hiss fiercely. He shook his heads and stretched wide his 12 horrid jaws. He spread out his forest of claws, but this helped him not at all. The mace kept on smiting him, moving about so fast that not a single head escaped, but could only hiss, groan, and shriek wildly. Now it had given 1,000 blows. The blood gushed from 1,000 wounds, and there was no help for the dragon. He raged, writhed about, and shrieked in despair. Finally, as blow followed blow, and he could not see who gave them, he gnashed his teeth, belched forth flame, and at length turned his claws upon himself, plunging them deep into his own flesh, struggled, writhed, twisted himself round, and in and out his blood flowed freely from his wounds. And now it was all over with the dragon. The prince, seeing this, went into the courtyard of the palace, put his horse into the stable, and went up by a winding stair towards the tower, whence the Princess Miranda, having seen him, addressed him. "Welcome, Prince Hero. I saw how you disposed of the dragon, but do be careful, for my enemy, Kashier, is in this palace. He is most powerful, both through his own strength and through his sorceries, and if he kill you, I can live no longer. Princess Miranda, do not trouble about me. I have the life of Kashier in this egg." Then he called out, "Invisible self-fighting mace, go into the palace and beat Kashier." The mace bestirred itself quickly, battered into the iron doors, and set upon Kashier. It smote him on the neck till he crouched all together. The sparks flew from his eyes, and there was a noise of so many mills in his ears. If he had been an ordinary mortal, it would have been all over with him at once. As it was, he was horribly tormented and puzzled, feeling all these blows and never seeing whence they came. He sprang about, raved and raged, till the whole island resounded with his roaring. At last he looked through the window, and behold there he saw Prince Hero. "Ah, that is all your doing," he exclaimed, and sprang out into the courtyard to rush straight at him and beat him to a jelly. but the prince held the egg in one hand ready, and he squeezed it so hard that the shell cracked and the yolk and the white were all spilled together. Kashier fell lifeless. And with the death of the enchanter, all his charms were dissolved at once. All the people in the island who were asleep woke up and began to stir. The soldiers woke from sleep, and the drums began to beat. They formed their ranks, massed themselves in order, and began to march towards the palace. And in the palace there was great joy, for Princess Miranda came towards the prince, gave him her white hand, and thanked him warmly. They went to the throne room, and following the princess's example, her 12 waiting maids paired off with 12 young officers of the army, and the couples grouped themselves round the throne on which the prince and princess were sitting. And then a priest, arrayed in all his vestments, came in at the open door, and the prince and princess exchanged rings and were married. And all the other couples were married at the same time, and after the wedding there was a feast, dancing and music, which it is a pleasure to think of. Everywhere there was rejoicing. The end. Thank you for listening. If you like this tale, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. Thanks for all your support, and I will see you again tomorrow with another story.